Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all our viewers. Today on World Ranger Day, under the theme Guardians of the Wilderness, we honor our rangers who face challenges, dangers, and difficulties on a daily basis to protect our precious wildlife and the wilderness. And we pay tribute to those who have died in the line of duty. These men and women of courage are our true conservation heroes. World Ranger Day was created by the International Ranger Federation and was first held in 2007. It is held on the 31st of July of every year. It is estimated that there are more than 100,000 reserves, parks, and protected areas around the world. Without rangers, these parks would obviously not be able to exist. The SANParks Honorary Rangers Association wants to invite you to join us through this initiative to salute and thank the rangers in our wilderness areas for their bravery and dedication. The SANParks Honorary Rangers is an association of over 2,000 volunteers who, for their love of nature, support SANParks through a variety of projects and activities in the conservation of our natural heritage. But today, our focus is on the people, the guardians of the wilderness. They are dedicated, resilient, courageous individuals who work tirelessly to protect our diverse wilderness areas, not for wealth or recognition, but for the unconditional love they have for our country's wildlife and our world's wilderness areas. A love that we as honorary rangers share with them. For many of them, their chosen career in conservation has inevitably led to anti-poaching, fire management, and law enforcement. Every day, they experience tremendous risks to their health, safety, and well-being to protect our precious species. Without their efforts, many, including the iconic rhino, would have been lost forever. We salute them and thank them for their bravery and dedication. We invite you to join us, the SANParks Honorary Rangers, in paying tribute to our rangers on World Ranger Day. We are honored to be joined today by rangers and conservation friends from all over the world who will share with us their experiences at the front line of conservation. They will be introduced later, but I take this opportunity to thank them for their willingness to participate in this program and to share their stories and contributions with us. Thank you also to 𝗟𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏 and our Pretoria region and all those volunteers in the background for their initiative in making this program possible. Enjoy this online celebration and thank you for joining us.
My name is 𝗟𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗿. I'm a General Manager for Area Integrity Management in SANParks. I'm responsible for safety and security for all national parks. And it's an honor for me to welcome all the participants in this year's World Ranger Day. And therefore, I would like to officially open the World Ranger Day 2022. And this is something very special for us in South African national parks and in South Africa in general, to honor the sacrifices of our rangers. And we know they work under trying conditions, and we know that they are not the highly paid people in society. And rangers are really the eyes and ears of conservation agencies. We rely on them. On top of that, I want to thank the organizers of this World Ranger Day 2022, the South African National Parks Honorary Rangers. Thank you very much to the organizing team. We are proud of you. You made us proud. And I would like also to acknowledge the participants in this year's World Ranger Day. They are national, international bodies and NGO government agencies. I won't mention their names. They will be introduced during the seminar. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Flynn, and I am proud to serve as the Chief Ranger of the United States National Park Service. On this World Ranger Day, I am proud to stand with my fellow park rangers from all over the world, including in South Africa. We share a global mission to protect our natural and cultural heritage, these most special places that have been placed in our care. When Yellowstone National Park was created in 1872 and started the national park movement, who could have envisioned that over 100 countries would now have their own national parks? Our roots started here in the United States with just one park ranger by the name of 𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗄. He's considered the first park ranger and served in Yellowstone. His job was incredibly difficult as he had to patrol immense areas by himself to protect the wildlife and forests from poachers and loggers. Founded in 1916, the National Park Service has grown to a workforce of over 20,000 employees, working in 423 natural and cultural areas. In my job, I'm responsible for a wide range of programs, including law enforcement, security and emergency services, fire and aviation, safety, public health, regulations and special park uses, and wilderness stewardship. We proudly support the over 1,800 law enforcement officers who serve as rangers, agents, and park police officers. But the National Park Service also has park rangers that provide interpretation and other visitor services. Our national park teams protect our parks and support a whole range of visitor needs. I know that rangers around the world are called to do many difficult and different things, and I am especially grateful to the sacrifices that these rangers have made, including the ultimate sacrifice. We can and must all work together to find better ways to protect the protectors. Rangers throughout the world are committed to the national park ideal and must be creative in finding ways to overcome the many challenges we face. As South Africa is one of the world's top 3 mega biodiverse nations, South African National Park Rangers and the Honorary Rangers have an incredibly important mission. I am proud of the long history the United States National Park Service and the South African National Parks share. Over the years, we have learned so much from each other. Our parks share many of the same challenges and opportunities, from climate change to interpretive techniques to preventing illegal uses. In recent years, we have become even more aware that we should and must work together to help solve many of the common issues and problems we share. To my fellow park rangers, thank you for conserving biodiversity, combating the climate crisis, and protecting the parks and the people who enjoy them responsibly. Happy World Ranger Day.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to be here and join you guys on for World Ranger Day, and excited to share with you some of the work that 𝗟𝗲𝗿𝗄 does with rangers across Africa. Our presentation today is called Africa's Rangers on the Front Line, because they really are on the front line of conservation. Just a little bit about 𝗟𝗲𝗿𝗄. We're the Game Rangers Association of Africa. We are based in South Africa. We have a South African chapter, and we also have chapters across different countries in Africa. We have approximately 1,800 members, and we are in our 52nd year. Our rangers are across 25 different countries, and we're a group of rangers that support rangers working in conservation across the continent. Just a basic graphical representation of where some of our members are from, and you'll see they work across many different parks and protected areas in many different countries, and fulfill many different roles in conservation And some of those I'll share with you over the course of this morning. So a lot of people ask us, what is a ranger? And I'll take you through some of the basic jobs and services that rangers do in conservation. So we describe rangers as the guardians of wild Africa, and that includes, obviously the wildlife and the wild places across the continent. One of the things that is, most people do understand about rangers' work is that they're there to enforce the law. They fulfill a large component of law enforcement in the protected areas and conservation areas in which they work, and are mandated to enforce the environmental and conservation laws in those places. There's a large degree of ranger training that goes on. You can imagine rangers need to have specific skill sets developed specifically around the conservation law enforcement, and they need to be aware of the regulations and laws within the countries that they operate in, and be able to enforce those with respect for people and for human rights of the local peoples and communities where they operate. This is a training course that went on up in North Africa in one of the parks. And you'll see there's a growing contingent of female rangers across Africa, which is fantastic to see. Females only represent about 11% of the global ranger force. So there's a large movement going on to try and get more inclusive when it comes to gender equality in the ranger force. Across different protected areas, we also work with many different species that help us. One is obviously the canines. Canine capability really is a game changer for rangers when it comes to law enforcement. And canines can be used in many different aspects, whether it's tracking or detection work to find illicit substances like rhino horn and ivory, and also to track suspects that might enter parks illegally to poach. And they really are incredible. Rangers get a lot of joy about, and a lot of success working with these canines. And I think in the last 10 years, we've seen a huge amount of focus on this, and it really has changed the game for a lot of anti-poaching units. These are some of our members based in 𝗿𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏. They work in 𝗏𝗏 National Park, which is a World Heritage Site in the Ivory Coast. Some really special species there, and they're tasked with obviously protecting and conserving that special part of West Africa. Rangers are obviously involved in a lot more than just law enforcement, and that's something that we're trying to bring attention to across the globe at the moment. And one of the things they do is they're obviously involved in biological monitoring of species, and those can be wildlife species or plant species in the areas that they work, where they will report and monitor the success of those populations alongside researchers and scientists. This is an example of rangers working in KwaZulu-Natal in Zululand in South Africa. Here they're tracking black rhino that is fitted with a foot collar, and you'll see the anti-poaching unit is in the back of the vehicle there, and the rhino monitor is obviously locating where that rhino is, and the anti-poaching unit will then deploy to go and monitor that animal, see what condition it's in, and also protect it. Here's another example of rangers in Swaziland, monitoring a black rhino. If you look really closely in that photograph, you can see there's just a small snout of a young rhino sticking out below the mother there. Really important to record births, so we know exactly how many of the species are in the reserve. And obviously always exciting to discover a new calf. And rangers will monitor these animals on a daily basis, checking on their condition, making sure that they, that they're still doing all right, and seeing if any calves have been born. A really important part of their work. Here's a ranger up in Namibia coming across an elephant during patrol. You can imagine rangers need to be well trained with how to deal with walking in environments where you come across dangerous game on a daily basis. So really important part of the training is to make them comfortable in the environments that they work in. They spend a lot of time on foot. Here's another example, and I think a a section of rangers that are often forgotten about are the marine rangers. These chaps are monitoring turtle nesting sites in the Seychelles. Really important to keep a track of that, seeing the breeding success of turtles and making sure the nest sites are logged, so we can make sure that when when the hatchlings are arriving, that they can be monitored and protected as best possible. And as I say, it's the marine rangers are really a forgotten part of the ranger force. Many people, when they picture a ranger, picture someone in khakis or camouflage operating in a savanna environment, but really important job that the rangers in the marine environments do. Rangers also manage species and landscapes, so they're involved in conservation management activities, and I'll show you a couple of these to give you some idea around what these could entail. So fire management, rangers sometimes have to start and sometimes have to stop fires. Starting fires would be in terms of ensuring effective fire regimes in some systems. Down in the Western Cape, obviously the 𝗵𝗺𝗿𝗃𝗁 biome is really reliant on fire, so it's important that fire comes through those systems on a periodic basis. So in some areas, rangers will need to start fires to maintain those areas. Obviously the savannas and grassland areas as well. Fires are very important for rejuvenation of some of these plant species. So they'll also have to fight fires. So wildfires that might be threatening human life or animal life will need to be monitored and fought in some instances, and rangers will need to keep an eye on that. So also a huge part of the work in certain environments, and something that requires, once again, specialized training to teach rangers how to combat these wildfires. They can be extremely dangerous, as you can imagine. Here's some rangers working up in East Africa, where they, protecting and looking after wildlife orphans. These are some elephant orphans in this particular rescue center, which will then be released back into the wild once they've been rehabilitated. And these rangers obviously serve as custodians and guardians of these youngsters while they're in the orphanage, and really, an unfortunate but necessary part of rangers' work. Obviously, since the rhino poaching epidemic, sort of 10 to 12 years ago, a number of rhino orphanages have sprung up across Africa in response to this, and obviously elephant orphanages as well, and other species as well will sometimes be taken and looked after, specifically around rare and endangered species. As you can imagine, we try and let nature take its course as best possible, but sometimes we do have to intervene, especially with rare and endangered species. Here's an example of rangers getting involved in game capture. This rhino was destined to head up to Botswana, caught down in KwaZulu-Natal in Zululand at 𝗵𝗺𝗿𝗺𝗍𝗺 Private Game Reserve, and heading up there as part of a range expansion program, and repopulating some of the areas in Botswana. So that those tasked with actually doing the capture, obviously working alongside vets, helicopter pilots, and game capture units, but the rangers on the reserve themselves will also get involved in relocation of game, and habitat, and range expansion has been a real success story when you think of the some of the parks that have been restored in Africa over the last 20 or 30 years by organizations such as African Parks, Peace Parks Foundation, and Wildlife Conservation Society, and others have done a great job in terms of restoring some of the wildlife populations in these areas, and moving that game has really been a game changer, for want of a better description. Something that rangers also get involved in is control of alien invasive species. So here these rangers are spraying some 𝗵𝗺𝗆𝗿, an invasive species. A lot of our invasive species come from places like South America and Australasia, and find the conditions here quite suitable. They don't have any natural prey, any natural sort of species that feed on them. So they tend to outcompete some of our local species, and thus it becomes important for rangers to monitor these. The first step would be monitoring them. The second step would then be trying to control the population. and that's exactly what this ranger team is doing here. Just another example of game relocation. Here's how you get an elephant and move it onto a track. They basically lace up its feet, hang it upside down with a crane, put it on the back of the truck, and then can move that animal to other areas. And this has become an extremely important tool in terms of elephant population management. You know, taking them from areas of high density and moving them to areas where they've either been historically poached out or are found in low densities. So it becomes an incredibly important part of elephant management. Rangers also engage and support local communities. After all, rangers themselves are from these communities. They work alongside communities. Here's an example of community members on this community-owned reserve getting involved, coming and seeing a dehorning operation of some rhino, so that they can take that message back to the community members. After all, these animals themselves are on land that it belongs to these communities. Rangers themselves are also part of the community. They often live in areas adjacent to the parks where they work. Here's a ranger in East Africa and Kenya, chatting to some children, showing them some of the work that they do in the nearby reserve. It's important that the kids and community members, you know, living adjacent to these reserves, understand the value of conservation and the work that these rangers do. And rangers are really the best ambassadors to be able to take that message out into the outlying areas when they speak to people. So community engagement, really a big part of what rangers do. Here's one of the rangers up in Ivory Coast, once again chatting to a group of community women and explaining some of the work that they do in the park that is nearby. Also human-wildlife conflict mitigation. Rangers are the ones that will chat with community members, you know, explain some of the work that they do, and also, you know, negotiate and mitigate some of the conflict that happens when wildlife and domestic stock do share similar landscapes. Often in many parks in Africa, there are no fences, you know, so people are grazing cattle in areas where, you know, large predators such as lion, leopard, cheetah do roam from the nearby national parks and conservancies. And it's really important that communities understand this, that they understand the threat, and that they can try and mitigate this. You know, things like you know, changing herding practices, making sure community members kraal their livestock at night, so that it mitigates some of the risk of predation to lions and other predators. And rangers are really at the forefront of this. It can be quite a tricky part of the job. Obviously, domestic stock has a huge value to community members, and when a cow or donkey or horse is killed by lions, it can lead to you know, to conflict with conservation and with rangers themselves. So it's really important that there's systems in place and that communication is open between the conservation areas and the surrounding communities. Here's another example up in 𝗄𝗵𝘁 National Park, where the park manager is chatting with local community members about some of the activities that they're undertaking. So, you know, we always talk about supporting rangers really benefits all species. So all species in areas where rangers work benefit from their presence and from the work that they do. Whether it be, you know, in parks that have special and endangered species like black rhino, seen in here in this photograph, where rangers are getting involved in dehorning operations to mitigate some of the poaching risk. Or up in East Africa, you know, in parks where large elephant populations are, of course, rangers will protect these large iconic species, but they'll also protect and conserve other species that are found in these places. And then this slide's just to show the, you know, rangers are part of the community as well. You know, community areas adjacent to wildlife areas often benefit from the wildlife areas themselves. And it's not just about creating jobs. but also, other benefits in terms of being able to, in some areas they're able to graze cattle in and around the surrounding wildlife areas. There are also other benefits in terms of social upliftment programs and bringing services into communities, things like schools, clinics, and these often brought into the areas by the presence of protected and conservation areas. So they form a really important part, protecting both animals and people around parks. And rangers, they really do work against all odds in these remote and beautiful places. Often under-resourced, underpaid. It really is a tough job. It's not a glamorous job to be a ranger in many of these parks in Africa. Just some of the environments that rangers work in. This is up in northern Namibia. And you'll see the harshness of that terrain. These rangers are using mules to be able to cover ground more effectively, and a really great program set up there by Save the Rhino Trust Namibia. There's some rangers up in East Africa. You'll see in the forest environment, obviously very different. You'll see they're wearing their ponchos and gumboots, really wet and damp in those areas, vastly different to those operating in the deserts of Namibia. And you can imagine the equipment and training slightly different depending on the context that you're operating in. Here's some marine rangers working in the lake systems of 𝗄𝗵𝗿𝗄𝗏 in South Africa. Once again, marine ranger training. You needs to incorporate water safety, boat operation, and many other aspects that marine rangers would need to be trained in. So rangers, risk their lives to protect these wildlife and wild places where they work. There's a misconception sometimes that rangers that are killed in action are killed predominantly by poachers. From the statistics that we keep, most rangers that are killed, murdered in the parks where they work is actually through militia groups, specifically in the DRC, in places like Virunga. You saw the stats there in terms of how many rangers have been killed in Virunga over the years, and it is a harsh reality of working in these parks. I was fortunate enough to spend some time with some rangers that have worked in Virunga, and stories of them going out on patrol, 25-man patrols, well armed with mortars, semi-automatic weapons, but encountering groups of up to 500 militia when they're on patrol. And I think the odds, when we talk about rangers coming up against all odds, that's really the extreme, is in places like DRC. Rangers are often the breadwinners. They come from, often poor backgrounds, living in local communities nearby parks, and they often feed a number of mouths. In some areas, rangers can support over 10 people through their salary, and their salaries are often meager. So it's important that if rangers are either killed or injured in the course of their work, that their families are protected and looked after, and that's something that we really strive for as 𝗟𝗲𝗿. As you'll see there, we say rangers work against all odds, but I think, many of us, if we haven't worked in these kind of places, actually, it's really difficult to imagine the odds that they face in areas like this. And I just wanted to sort of take you through a couple of statistics here. There was a survey done a few years ago where, it worked out that the average ranger in Africa earned less than $250 a month. In my mind, that figure is slightly inaccurate. I know of rangers earning less than $50 a month in places like Congo, in some of those parks that you've seen in the photographs and videos. So it really is a low paid job. And when you think of the odds that they face and the job that they're expected to do, it's certainly something that should be better paid. Rangers also work long hours. There's no such thing as off time when you're working in these parks. The job doesn't stop. animals don't rest. You can have a breakout of an elephant at 2 o'clock in the morning and have to retrieve the elephant from the community areas, or you have poaching incursion at all hours of the day. So it's long hours and often long times away from your family. Some rangers work 6 weeks away and then will return to their families for 2 weeks. Others can spend 9 to 12 weeks away from their families, if not longer, before returning to them. So it's often long hours away from home without seeing your kids. Communication is sometimes difficult because of the remoteness of the areas in which we work. The living conditions can be extremely poor. This is an example of a sort of out base of rangers where they're operating from here, sleeping on mats on the ground. Really unacceptable in terms of where we expect rangers to work. They often do sleep out in the field and should be equipped to do so. But when they return to base, they should have adequate facilities, decent place to sleep, wash, and clean to start with. And that's something that it really needs help across many parks in Africa. And then when we look at the sort of support systems that rangers have, the survey found only 50% of them had life insurance, and this is despite the tremendous odds that they face and the number of people that they provide for. Only about 40% of rangers have disability insurance. Obviously, if a ranger picks up an injury on duty, it can often mean that they can't continue working. And if they don't have disability insurance, this can be extremely impoverishing for their families and for those that they support. So one of the programs that we set up is a concept called 𝗿𝗵𝗿𝗃𝗁. It's an insurance program. It's the largest insurance program in Africa for rangers. It only costs about $50 per ranger per annum, and it provides them with a level of Medevac insurance. Obviously, we need to be proactive about ranger safety, so ensuring that they can get to a medical facility quickly to try and mitigate risk of serious injury or death. And then the policy also has a death and disability benefit and funeral benefit for rangers should we not be able to keep them safe. So something that's really needed. It's a program that we're looking at expanding across the continent, and you'll see we've got close on 1,800 rangers now supported through this 𝗿𝗵𝗿𝗃𝗁 insurance program, and something that we're looking at growing. When we look at equipment, about 59% of rangers said they didn't have the right equipment or amenities to ensure their safety, which is obviously a big problem. And you look at the costs of kitting out a ranger properly, it can be quite expensive. A decent pair of boots is about $100, and rangers can, if they're patrolling a lot, can go through 2 sets a year. About $480 for decent uniform, and that's sort of 3 sets of uniform. And once again, just the conditions that rangers work in, they're pretty hard on their uniform, so you need to get decent kit. And patrol equipment, that can vary from radios to GPSs, depending on the reserve itself, but can be between $250 and $3,000 for patrol equipment. Some of that can be shared, things like radios in a small group, and GPSs, but it can get really expensive to kit out rangers. One of the initiatives we have in this space is what we call our Ranger Gear Initiative, and this year we'll provide over 500 boots with Jim Green for rangers across Africa. One of the parks that's benefited that honorary rangers will be aware of is 𝗿𝗏𝗿. We've been able to assist 𝗿𝗏𝗿 with some boots recently, and I was down there and met up with the guys, which was great to see. Really good boots. They'll last the guys a long time. When it comes to training, about 40% of rangers said that they weren't adequately trained. Training can also be quite expensive. You can imagine anything from $250 for a first aid course to $1,800 for basic training. And a basic course is 6 to 8 weeks. But you can imagine the skill sets required. It requires a lot more training than that. So advanced training is also required after the basics have been done. And then lots of in-service training and mentoring by sort of elder and competent rangers who are leaders in the field is really required. And over the last sort of 10 to 15 years, about 2,000 rangers have gone through different programs that we've been able to support and facilitate, which has been fantastic. Rangers deserve so much more than what they're getting at the moment, and I think that's the recurring theme. Often people ask us how you can help. I think we're around World Ranger Day. One of the keys is helping to raise awareness about what rangers do, the diverse and important role that they play in conservation, and ensuring that people understand the great work that they do against all odds, protecting the things that we all love and need in this world. And then directly support rangers. I know SANParks Honorary Rangers do a fantastic job supporting rangers in the parks where they operate, and that's much needed, and we're really grateful to them for that. Rangers work for nature, and we as GRAA work for those rangers themselves. If you want to find out any more information about Game Rangers Association of Africa, just head over to gameranger.org, or you're welcome to contact me directly. Thanks everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Bongani is 35 years old. It's only 10 a.m. and it's already a sweltering hot day. Bongani and his 2 colleagues left the base at 5 a.m. this morning, just as the first red light of the morning started to unveil the bush around them. They've already patrolled 10 kilometers, and when they reach the banks of a dry riverbed, they settle down to take a water break in the welcoming shadows of a 𝗟𝗵𝗿𝗿𝗀 tree. Bongani's backpack is old and worn. They've had very little replacement kit in the last 2 years due to lack of budget. The padding has worn away from the shoulder straps of his backpack, and a hot chafing burn from the worn straps has started on his shoulders. It's quiet in the group, and Bongani's thoughts drift. He remembers that feeling of pride 12 years ago, when he successfully completed the 6-week basic field ranger training course, after which he was appointed as a field ranger. Bongani had hoped that he could have opportunities to advance further in his career. However, opportunities for him and most of his colleagues have been scarce. Once a field ranger, always a field ranger. Even the basic ranger refresher training seems to have petered out the last few years. Money has always been a challenge for Bongani's family, but at least now he has a regular income, although his salary does not go a long way across the 7 dependents that he supports. Bongani is able to go home once a month on time off to see his family, although this can be stressful. It should be a time when he can clear his mind to unload from the pressures of work and allow his body to recuperate from the physical exertion of daily long foot patrols. The pressures of being the only breadwinner often play out in tensions and quarrels within the family. People know he is a ranger, and he feels awkward at times when some people in the community vent their frustrations about the park. He understands them, but he also has a job to keep. He prefers just to stick with his closest friends. They like to relax and have a couple of beers at a local 𝗄𝗵𝗁. During his last time off, there was someone new at the 𝗄𝗵𝗁 who bought him a drink. As the beer flowed, they got chatting and got on well. As he can afford it, Bongani is building an addition to his home, and his new acquaintance who owns a truck offered to help transport some building materials. Bongani was grateful for the generosity, and he gladly accepted. More recently, though, his new friend has become colder. He often asks about their patrols and where the rhinos can be seen. Bongani is due for time off in 3 days' time, and this acquaintance has insisted on meeting him to speak about an opportunity to make some really good money. Bongani feels a churn in his stomach. He knows where this is going, but he feels trapped. He could kick himself. It started off with just one kind favor. 𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂 looks across at his colleagues who are still quietly sitting in the cool shade. They are a good team and they are proud of what they do. But even amongst these colleagues, one has to be careful what you say. There have been 3 rhino poached in the last 2 weeks, and there's an underlying tension at the ranger station, not unlike the underlying constant background hum of the cicadas. 𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂 softly calls to his colleagues. It's time to continue. They gather their equipment and start to walk again, single file down the riverbed. The stiffness in their legs begins to ease as they get into a rhythm as the blood starts to flow again. They approach a muddy pool in the riverbed, which is always a good place to see which animals have recently passed the area. Suddenly, 𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂's colleague, who is leading the patrol, freezes and signals with his hand to stop. He points down to the ground just in front of him. There are 3 sets of human footprints in the riverbed. The edges of the tracks are sharp and there is some damp mud splatter around the front of the tracks, indicating that it is very recent. 𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂 and his colleagues crouch down and scan the surrounding riverbed. A bead of sweat runs down 𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂's cheek as he feels his heart starting to thump in his chest, and a sense of dread moves like a tingling wave across his skin. He has been here many times before, but it does not get any easier. The blissful early days in his career were not like this. What has happened? They make a soft radio report to the ranger station. Support is on the way, and the instruction is to start to follow the tracks and to give a further report as soon as they have a clearer idea of the situation. 𝗿𝗂𝗍𝗂 looks at his colleagues, and they briefly hold a gaze without anything being said. There's always this moment when the unknowns and dangers of what lies ahead flashes through their minds. Slowly and deliberately, they start to follow the tracks.
Rangers traditionally had a role as guardians and protectors and monitors of the areas that they work in. So understanding natural phenomena, recording that, wildlife management issues, research and tourism. And obviously there's always been an element of law enforcement in the work that they do. But this has significantly changed over the last decade or more, with the increased pressures that rangers are facing now with increased rhino and elephant poaching in these landscapes. So their roles have changed almost exclusively now to a law enforcement and protection role in these landscapes they work, and those earlier roles of rangers have had to fall away in favour of these urgent challenges that they have to address in the current circumstances that they face. Rangers around the world are generally under-resourced, under-acknowledged, and underappreciated in the work that they do. It's a hard line of work, a hard career, and they face significant challenges on a daily basis, often life-threatening challenges. So the overall resilience and well-being of rangers is a really, really important issue to work on and address. Rangers, often have critical things like equipment shortages. They work long hours in the field. Often there's intense psychological or physical challenges that they have to face. And often, conservation agencies are under-resourced, so resourcing to support these needs is really often a significant challenge. So with the 𝗄𝗵𝗿𝗁 program, we recognize this need for rangers and supporting their resilience, because they ultimately are the people on the ground protecting these natural resources for future generations and the communities around these parks and protected areas that depend on these areas. So we have a number of projects or activities around supporting rangers. We have some programs just supporting some basic equipment gaps that have come up as an urgent need. We're doing a lot of work around legal support of rangers, recognizing that it's really critical that rangers operate within the law and understand their rights and roles and responsibilities in carrying out their duties, but also that rangers are protected and their rights are protected, and in terms of the really difficult jobs that they have to carry out. We also recognise that rangers need a path of career development and progression, and so building capacity and skills within rangers is really essential. So we have partnered with the Southern African Wildlife College to develop a course on ranger leadership, which is really crucial because rangers often get trained in practical or technical aspects of ranger work, and these softer skills around leadership development are not often part of the ranger curricula. So this course supports growth and development in leadership, deals with things like communication skills, conflict resolution, supporting integrity and mitigating corruption, dealing with advanced technology, so those type of aspects that are not often included in traditional ranger curricula. So that with the ranger leadership training that we've done, currently we've trained 57 rangers, and we plan to continue this training support over the 𝗄𝗵𝗿𝗁 program. We have seen significant good and positive feedback from the training. A number of observations from supervisors noting just a change in attitude and a change in the rangers' way of going about things and their approach to the challenges that they face, and feedback from the rangers themselves who have gone through this training, who really appreciate firstly being recognised in terms of the need for them to be developed as leaders, but having their eyes open to a new set of skills and a new approach and an understanding of leadership and how important it is for them to have that capacity to deal with these significant challenges that they're facing. Rangers, more often than not, come from communities around the protected areas in which they work. So they face this real challenge in that their duty is to work and protect the protected areas, yet there may be animosity or resentment towards them from the community members. So that's something that adds significant pressures to rangers when they come home and are on their off time. They're in amongst a community that may be hostile towards them. But ultimately a ranger's role is obviously protecting the environment, but also protecting and guarding the rights of the people around these parks and the resources that they depend on. It's a very difficult balance that rangers have to make, and certainly part of a need in terms of supporting them in terms of their resilience, but also enabling mechanisms for rangers to interact and engage with communities so that that relationship and trust is supported and built for the better protection of the environment and the people that depend on it.
SANParks Foundation protects and reconnects nature across Southern Africa, and we bring countries together to care for wild spaces that stretch beyond borders. We prioritize people living in these landscapes by building skills and creating jobs so that people can live in harmony with nature. We protect and restore biodiversity, which would not be possible without the men and women who work as wildlife guardians in protected areas. They serve on the front lines of conservation, and we proudly pay tribute to 5 rangers working in some of Southern Africa's most remarkable wilderness areas.
Diga. Porque eu amo a conservação, é o que nos facilita a própria nossa medicação. Se nós respeitamos a natureza, é porque respeitamos a nossa cultura. temos de valorizar o que é nosso e preservar tudo que nós tivemos do passado para os nossos descendentes, as gerações vindouras.
𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗏 forms part of a team of highly skilled rangers tasked to protect the newly introduced rhino herd.
Sim, avaliando o repovoamento da espécie rino nas áreas de conservação em Moçambique, especialmente o Parque Nacional de Zinave, digamos que pelo foco do repovoamento ela vai permanecer. Em nenhuma queda de incursão que nós aceitamos que ela vai sofrer por abate. Se haver esses casos, talvez serão críticos, mas estamos aptos para proteção e fiscalização do mesmo, porque é uma espécie que nós precisamos para ela, com que ela evolua o seu número de população animal.
𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗿, one of the few female rangers in Limpopo National Park, recently embarked on an exciting journey to Sweden, where she received an award from Her Majesty Queen Sylvia. This award is in recognition of Mira's efforts of teaching and inspiring children about wildlife protection through the Peace and Changemaker Generation, a joint project with the World Children's Prize Foundation and 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁𝗏 Foundation.
15 is about the age that Mira left her home to go and work in Maputo. And yeah, she's now a ranger in Limpopo National Park. It's quite hardcore. I don't know if you saw the video yesterday. Yeah, in the uniform. So she's like you in a different way. Also a really big inspiration for girls in Mozambique.
Okay. So you're the role model.
All children who were trained in Mozambique now see Ranger Mira as a role model. So do the millions of children who have read the story about Mira. Mira is one of few female rangers in Limpopo, and she trained the children on wildlife and the negative effects of poaching. Mira also stands up for girls' rights. Her real name is 𝗿𝗵𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗏, and we are very happy to have her here today. I call upon Her Majesty Queen Sylvia to present a personal globe to 𝗿𝗵𝗁𝗃𝗁𝗏.
Rangers play a vital role in conservation management and protection. And in areas as vast as Maputo National Park, rangers like Sergio spend many hours patrolling to keep the wildlife safe.
Posso dizer que trabalhando em conjunto com os Rangers da África do Sul traz uma valia, porque eu mesmo estou a falar, já trabalhei com eles várias vezes. Porque temos quase fizemos fronteira com uma reserva aí de 𝗵𝗵𝗁𝗏, da África do Sul. Temos o nosso posto lá, já trabalhei com eles lá. E já nos ajudamos em ambas partes a capturar os caçadores. E tenho 2 filhos. A minha família, quando eu comecei a trabalhar na área de conservação, primeiramente eles não gostavam. Só que ao andar do tempo, eu como gosto da natureza, eles também fui impressionando. Agora eles também já fazem parte da natureza.
Introducing 𝗿𝗵𝗁𝗿𝗃𝗁𝗏, a wildlife scout in Zambia's 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗁𝗏 Community Conservancy, whose passion and knowledge for the environment that she works in never fails to leave us inspired.
Good morning everyone. I would like to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to stand in front of all the viewers. 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗁𝗏 Community Conservancy, it is an important conservancy to us all, both workers and the communities. It is a conservancy which started in the year 2012, and it is a conservancy which firstly received the species impalas of impalas. And currently, as I say, we've got different species. different 11 species like zebras, buffaloes, water bugs, and many more to say. And this conservancy, it is divided of two chiefs. Chief 𝗂𝗵𝗁𝗿 of Chundu, Southern Province of Kazungula District, and Chief Inyambo of Mandi District, 𝗂𝗵𝗄𝗃𝗁𝗿, Western Province. And this conservancy, it is really doing a good job to us all.
So I'm with Gavin now, the breeder, and she's gonna be coming up to 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏. Hey girl.
Meet one of 𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗏's newest four-legged friendly canine ranger recruits, Chicago.
𝗿𝗏𝗴𝗏𝗏.
As well as helping to sniff out any illegal activity within 𝗟𝗏𝗏, Chicago's newest role includes protecting the recently translocated white rhinos. Of course, her good behavior is always rewarded with plenty of cuddles. Being a ranger is not for the faint-hearted. It not only requires being able to work tirelessly in remote and vast areas, but families sacrifice too, as they are often away from their loved ones for long periods of time. It is thanks to the dedicated efforts of rangers like these that we can create a future in which humans can live in harmony with nature.
I am the operations manager for the Special Operators team and the operations room in 𝗵𝗵𝗁𝗏 National Park. The focus areas of the operations room and the special operators is to address environmental crime as well as visitor safety crime throughout the protected area. This project started in April 2021, where we selected 26 rangers from across the landscape. They participated in a rigorous selection process where they were tested in terms of their mental and physical capabilities. Toward the end of the selection process, we ended up with 18 individuals who went on further specialist training, which included special weapons and canine handler training. Once the training was complete, these rangers then graduated on the 3rd of December 2021. The need for this project within 𝗵𝗵𝗁𝗏 National Park was to address crime in not only the environmental components of the park, marine and terrestrial, but as well as to address the safety concerns that our visitors were experiencing in the landscape. The way that the operations room and the SEAM team work together is that the operations room has a number of resources that we use to focus our efforts to achieve maximum success in terms of apprehending and preventing environmental and contact crime within the park. After we launched in December, we have seen a number of successes where we focused our energy, for example, into marine counter-poaching. We use our canines and technology to track down groups or syndicates that operate commonly throughout the marine protected area, where one is not allowed to remove certain species from the park. The benefit of having this special operators group is not only to support the area integrity mandate of 𝗵𝗵𝗁𝗏 National Park and SANParks in its entirety, but also to display to the public the commitment that South African national parks has to safety throughout the entire landscape. We have noted with the trends over time, recording all of our successes and what we've put out on social media for people to engage with, is that the more experience that the team gets over time and the more they hone in on that specialist function of theirs, we are better able to work collaboratively with the other security cluster stakeholders. 𝗵𝗵𝗁𝗏 National Park is an urban park in that we are surrounded by residential areas, and we are not one consolidated landscape as one would experience in other national parks. Instead, we have partners and neighbors that we have to collaborate with, where we need to combine resources to achieve best success for the Cape Town public as well as our visitors in general. Any visitor that comes to Table Mountain National Park should be able to enjoy the environment, knowing that the custodians of the land are committed to the cause and that we are trained and equipped to ensure that the mandate of South African National Parks in terms of conservation and preservation is upheld to the highest of our capabilities.
So my role in the operations room is information officer. I collect all the information throughout Table Mountain National Park, including the marine protected area. I analyze the information to determine patterns with regards to poaching, visitor safety, and then predict what would happen to support operations so that we're in place and we are proactively attending to incidents. What I really love about my job is I get to see everything and assist in the background, but to aid as well for operations, to see successes and to aid operations. The information gathering system in Table Mountain National Park is quite discreet due to obviously information that is sensitive. We do not go into too deep into sharing information and sort of putting it out there to the public. Obviously, poachers are always one step ahead and we try to be 5 steps ahead. In saying so, we try our best to always stop where we can. Prevention is better than cure.
I am 𝗂𝗵𝗁𝗿 in the Table Mountain National Park. I'm here to talk about my experience as a SEAM and as a canine operator in the Table Mountain National Park. It's been something new when I came about started with the SEAM training and volunteering to be part of the training in the unit, this new unit that's forming in the Table Mountain National Park. It came on as a new experience for me because I never had a canine for me in my life, or I've never actually had a dog growing up. The training was a bit too extreme, but at last we came out of it. I came to learn a lot of skills, especially when it comes to canine. Be able to control your dog, to make it listen to your command, and also when it comes to the apprehension of suspects and pursuing suspects in the field and in Table Mountain National Park. Throughout the training, one of the most experiences that I had, we at some point we got a report that there were poachers in the park, so quickly loaded my canine along with some of the SEAM operators, got into the parking. So when we got to this side, jumped out, and then I put my dog on the leash, and then I realized now that we are outside the fence, and then the guys that we are pursuing were inside the fence. So I'm looking at this 2 meters high fence, and I thought, like, I need to jump this fence. So the first thing I did was to grab my dog with the leash and also with the harness, and then I jumped the fence. I remember being on top of the fence, and then I could see the guys with the, and then the moment I jumped out, then I yelled to the guys, stop and stop, or release my dog. And the guys didn't even look back at me. They kept on running and running, and then that's when I released my dog. And the moment I released my dog, it knew exactly what it wanted, and what actually it had to do was to apprehend the guys. And I ran after him because, I mean, as a dog handler, you need to know the risks that are happening. You need to be aware of you don't know what the suspects have on them. You don't know whether it's something dangerous or it could harm your dog. So you need to make sure that you're fit, daily exercising and all that that we did during training, and that I do on a daily basis. They count, especially as a dog handler, because you need to be fit as your dog. Not only your dog must be fit, but you need to be fit. So that's what I've learned during my training. When we going back to the scenario, we got to the suspects, and it was on a mountainous area. My dog got to the suspect and it apprehended. It was, as I remember, I think it was about 4 or 5 suspects. And the moment it got to the first 2 guys, the second 3 guys, they already knew that there's no way they can outrun the suspect. That's when I recalled my dog back to me, and then I put on the leash on. And then my colleagues were already behind me, because I mean, it's very important that when you are a dog handler, and then you need to make sure that you and your colleagues have that understanding that when you release your dogs, they are with you, and you need to ensure that your dog is familiar with your colleagues and everything, so it does not mistaken your colleagues for a suspect that you are actually pursuing. So it's been a very good experience for me to be in the SEAM unit. I mean, coming from a background of research and going into law enforcement, a lot of new things were thrown into me. I mean, having to know your acts, your regulations. When you meet a lot of people in fellow residents in Table Mountain, they ask you a lot of questions, and when you also do issuing of fines, you are expected to know the law. I mean, that is expected of someone who's done the training and then who is also operating in the table within the boundaries of Table Mountain National Park. So it's very important that as a SEAM, that you need to know your regulations, and you need to know also we get a lot of people that are coming, internationals and residents. It does not only falls onto the poaching incident as a SEAM operator. We do a lot of work. We do from backstripping, we do a lot of visitor safety. There's a lot of markings in Table Mountain National Park, and most of the time we get to wake up early in the morning. Not a lot of people know this, but we will be sitting in places where nobody would actually think that you'd be sitting. And someone who just passed next to you, and you've been there for like 4 or 5 hours, and the person doesn't even know that there's anyone around you. Maybe it's a normal hiker or an international hiker also, or someone who just came for sight viewing and such activities like that. So it's a very good experience and new skills that I've learned. I didn't think that I would get to this point, but I am very much impressed about how far that the SEAM unit, I mean the operators have come across, and we've come as a team, and we are so far working together and have been strong to be able to achieve any challenges that experienced in the Table Mountain National Park. It's very crucial that as all operators, we are able to work together and to keep our standards. As far as our trainings that we have went, every now and then we do training and retraining to make sure we sharpen our skills that we've learned. So assist us a lot when it comes to our handling of crime incidents, apprehension of suspects, and also not only sometimes as handlers and as like SEAM operators. We have been coming across with some, I mean, you can see sometimes there's some personal issues, but then that's where SANParks have introduced things like Project Embrace has helped us a lot, and because we are able to talk out some of the issues that we come across as operators in Table Mountain National Park. Some of the things you cannot say out, especially to the public. You cannot tell the public how you feel, but you need to keep up your professional posture and then be able to deal with that situation at that point. But you need to be able to separate your personal issues away from your work issues. So that's why I am also very helpful when it comes to Project Embrace. I like what they're doing, and it has assisted us a lot as SEAM operators. So yeah, that was my experience as a SEAM operator and as a canine handler.
From our side as well, thank you for remembering Shangoni and all the staff members, the field rangers, for the hard work that they do, and also making this a memorable time for our late field ranger 𝗄𝗵𝗁𝗿, who passed on in a tragic accident or incident whilst in line of duty. This is something that we always try to prevent, but with the work that we do, it is something that is always expected to can happen. So thank you mostly for the support that we get from the Honorary Rangers and all the donations and all the things that you offer us in order for us to perform our duties without any hindrances. Thank you very much. And to Shandu colleagues, they're still standing strong, and hopefully we'll continue to stand strong and not let the spirit of Shandu and the life that he lived as a field ranger just go in vain. That will continue to protect and to preserve and to conserve the nature and do it the best way that Shandu would have loved. Thank you very much.
A special word of thank you to the following organizations that played a role in the creation of this webinar: SANParks, the SANParks Sea, Air and Mountain or SEAM team, the National Park Service of the United States of America, the Game Rangers Association of Africa, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF South Africa, and the Peace Parks Foundation. Also, thank you to the members of the SANParks Honorary Rangers who planned and participated in this session, liaised with contributors and provided technical support. And then, thank you to each and every viewer of this webinar. You are essential in upholding a voice for nature. An African proverb says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Without the trees we plant and the endangered species we save, our world will be poorer and our ecosystems will perish. Indeed, we borrow the present from our children's future, and your support is vital in enabling the contributing organizations to continue doing what they do. I thank you all.